Good afternoon. Several of you have asked about how I line the Walmart tote bag, so I'm going to show you that now. I chose this striped fabric, which I think is really nice. You want something that's going to be pretty, stand out, but not be too bold, I think. But that's your preference. This is probably a decorating fabric. It's heavier than a quilting weight. You want something that's going to be durable, not too delicate inside for a lining, because it's going to take some pretty heavy use if it's like my purse. So you want to cut one piece for the lining that's 30 inches long, and that's going to go all the way down and back up. So the piece is going to go, it's going to wrap around like this. So 30 inches long by 16.5 inches wide, which is going to give you about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. You want the seams, once again, you want it to be sturdy. And I cut 2 pockets. This is just preference. You can go however you want with the pockets. 9 by 6 is this size. And then what I'll do is make a seam in the middle, so you'll actually have 2 pockets. And one, I usually make a seam like about right here, so you have a larger pocket, and then one for maybe pens, nail files, and that kind of thing. So I have 2 of those. So you need 3 pieces. 30 inches long, 16.5 inches wide, and then 2 pieces for your pockets. So the first thing I'm going to do is prepare the pockets. I'm going to add the pockets onto the lining first. So I'm going to press under, maybe a 1/4 inch on each side. And the bottom, press up about a 1/4 inch. And then the top, this is the top of the pocket. Fold it over about a 1/4 inch. And then again, maybe 1/2 inch. And steam it really well so it lays down. And what we're going to do is add that onto your lining. Now I'm going to take the pockets to the machine, and the top that has the double fold, I'm going to just top stitch along there and stitch that down on the top of both pockets. Now the top of each pocket is top stitched down. So you have a nice finished edge on there. And I've centered it on the fabric, and it comes down about 3.5 inches right here. And you notice I say about a lot because it's not precise, and you can adjust it to what suits you. So I'm going to pin one pocket on this end, turn it around, and pin the pocket on the other end for the other side of the bag. Alright, so I have pockets pinned on about 3.5 inches down, and then centered on the 16.5 width. One on that end and one on this end. I'm going to take it to the machine, and I'm going to top stitch down the sides, across the bottom, the top. Now what I'll probably do on this pocket, which I like to do a lot, is to stitch down across to about maybe within 3 inches, and stitch up and back down and over, which will give you a pocket that's nice for pens and nail files and things like that. So I'm going to take it to the machine. I'm going to top stitch each of these pockets on. Alright, I took the lining to the machine, stitched on the pockets, and I'll show you how I did that. And I always at the top of the pocket, do some zigzag stitches, go back a couple times over that just to reinforce so that it doesn't rip too easily. Okay, and then the other side, I'll show you. I did this smaller pocket over here on the side. So you got one for keys, your cell phone might fit in there, then you've got this one for pens and emery boards. So there's your lining, and we're going to fold it with print to the inside. Okay, right sides together. Right sides together. But before I do that, I'm going to press down a 1/2 inch at the top. So I pressed under 1/2 inch each side. Now I'm going to turn right sides together. Match up the tops. And I'm going to stitch along the side within about 3/4 of an inch. Okay, on each side. I'm not going to go completely to the top. So I've sewn the right sides together. Here's your lining with your pockets. And I left just a little at the top, and you'll see why later that that's important. All right, now I've pressed this, and I pressed especially the crease at the bottom. Here's why. You'll need to make your lining to match your bag. So this bottom, I measured it was 5.5 inches across, so I need to make my lining 5.5 inches at the bottom also. So I'm going to make it into a point. And I'm going to match the seam with that crease I made. So that way you're going to make sure you get a perpendicular line here. It won't be crooked, it won't be askew. Alright, so you have a point. The seam matches up with the crease. Now it was 5.5 inches. So I'm going to use my template, my chalk. On your template you have perpendicular lines. So this is the line you're going to mark. This is the line you're going to put on your seam. So 5.5. Okay. Make sure it's lined up. 5.5 inches. Mark it with your chalk. And I'll just show you with it again on the other side. Alright, match up your seam with the crease. You can feel it with your fingers when you match. So you have this point. Okay. And lay that down. Template. 5.5 inches. Line up the perpendicular line with the seam and mark with the chalk. Alright, now I'm going to go to the machine and seam this up on each side. Alright, so I seamed for the bottom. I'm going to trim that. Okay, I'm going to turn it just briefly just to show you then what the corners look like on the inside. Alright, so that'll be for your bottom. Alright, so now it's ready to put into your bag. Now I've put it into the bag, if you want, if it bothers you that the lining is loose, you could spread just a bit of E6000 glue on the inside of the bag and stick your fabric to that if you want it to stick down to the bag. Okay, so I put it in, kind of smoothed out the corners here. You can see. All right, so we just have one step left, and that's to stitch around, actually stitch it to the bag, and your lining will be complete. All right, I'm ready to start stitching. I have a number 11 needle on my machine. I have brown thread because the top stitching on the side of the bag is brown, and I want to match that because I'm going to be stitching right along the top seam right here. The top of the bag. It's not a seam. All right, I'm going to start just this side. But first of all, I pressed the edges of the lining away in the opposite direction that I'll be stitching. So I'll be stitching this way. I pressed the seam allowance that way. All right, and I'm going to start stitching just this side of the seam. I can't hold the camera and stitch at the same time, so I'll do a little and then I'll show you. The lining is almost even with the top of the bag. It's down just a hair, but you have to be able to catch it there, so you can't go down very far, but at the same time you don't want it to stick up either, so it takes you have to go slowly to get it just right. So I'll stitch a little bit and then I'll show you how it looks. All right, I'll show you just before I start to stitch. It's just this side of this seam allowance on the bag, and the lining is just under the edge, and I'm going to stitch right, I put the needle down right in this line of stitching, and I'm going to stitch right over that. Okay, I'm going to try to show you now. I've sewn a few stitches so you can see that the lining is very close to the edge of the bag, but still you can't see it from the front. The stitching is right over top of the original stitching. Okay, now I'm to the handle, and that's pretty tricky, so just go slow, and it will be fine. Okay, I'm almost to the end, and I'm going to see if you can see. When I do fabric bags, the lining, you can pull fabric and kind of adjust it, but with the pleather, it doesn't give. So if the lining isn't exactly the right size, you're going to have either a gap or you're going to have to make a pleat. So I left this open so that I can adjust it. All right, now I'm going to tuck those corners under, of course, but see, it's pulling just a little bit apart there, and I can use a needle and thread to hand stitch that back, but that way it's gonna fit really nicely along the top. All right, we are all done. So here's the inside. The strings are from the bag, not my work. And let's see, here's the, well, here's the edge where I kind of adjusted. Now I did lock stitch that, so that's not going to come loose. I'll just trim that. I probably won't even use a needle and thread because it's just a fraction of an inch. So here's what your bag looks like inside, if you can see. There's pockets on the front and the back. Okay. And it fits very nicely, and of course the magnetic closure still works. And there's your lined Walmart tote.